Sandrine, another year, another climate negotiations, or COP as they're called. You've been to a lot, I've been to a lot.
Yeah.
But there's a real sense of emergency now, isn't there? Urgency. We've had the IPCC, the sort of body of international scientists, tell us we've got 12 years to halve emissions. But then there doesn't feel like a sense of emergency in the negotiations. I mean, what's wrong? What's missing?
I think what's missing is that actually people now are the ones that are calling out and indicating that there is this sense of urgency. We've seen, obviously, the Extinction Rebellion. We've seen also
that's
climate,
that's
and
the little
logo that I have here.
Okay.
Very much supportive of the Extinction Rebellion and what it stands for. Actually launched by one of my very good friends, a woman who is trying to bring citizens together, like we've heard from many others who are starting to say enough is enough. And we've been talking about this for too long.
And we've seen this in London. So this is people occupying bridges and streets. We've seen in Australia school children going on strike from school, much to the disgust of Australia's Prime Minister. Anywhere else?
We're starting to see the same movement in the United States. I think we might see an action here as well, either today or tomorrow.
Wow, okay.
Which fits in nicely with what we've been calling for at the Club of Rome. As the new co-president of the Club of Rome, several of us, and mostly thought leaders who have been working in this area for many, many years. Some of our members actually were original members of the Club of Rome in 1968. So we've got a member who's 90 years old.
Wow.
And they have always indicated that we cannot continue to grow in the same way that we've been growing, that we need to reevaluate first our indicators of growth, but also take into consideration the natural planetary boundaries that we have and the resources that we have to try to minimize our impact on the globe.
Yet, the governments and their negotiators meeting here can't even welcome the science report they themselves commissioned.
Yeah. So I think there's only 4.
It's ordinary people who already and will suffer more from climate change and the other, and us hitting our planetary boundaries, for things like water and food and everything else. I mean, you heard David Suzuki, the Canadian TV presenter and climate advocate in Oslo at the event we were both at, talk about the sense of urgency. And I did a video with him, and he's quite pessimistic about, where we are and what we've got to achieve. I mean, do you share that pessimism, or are we going to get there?
It's hard because I'm innately an optimist, and I'm not necessarily a pessimist. But I must say, I started to reflect a little bit on my own history. And although I'm younger than David Suzuki, I've started to realize that I've spent the entire 30 years of my career working on climate sustainability and Europe. In fact, I started as a stagiaire, an intern in the European Commission. And to see the sense of crisis that we're under, I do get slightly pessimistic.
Do you think ordinary people out there, it's been communicated to them, the urgency has been communicated to them clearly? Do you think because I again did one of these videos with the US climate scientist Michael Mann. We were in the Arctic, and it was, he talked about the warming in the Arctic and how it's already impacting weather around the world. The heat waves we've seen, the wildfires, the hurricanes and superstorms. Do you think that penny is dropped in the public consciousness yet?
I don't think it's dropped in the public consciousness, and I don't think it's dropped in the political consciousness. I don't think anybody realized just the sense of urgency that we're under and the need to put in place an emergency plan. I mean, I am the second generation of Europeans, Belgians, who actually were part of the war. My grandparents actually fought in the war. My grandfather was a resistance fighter and actually was in a concentration camp for 3 years. And they knew how important the European project was.
Yes.
But in addition to that, they also knew that sometimes you need to hunker down. And I think what we haven't been able to communicate to people is hunkering down is okay. That's not a bad thing. We can go into a sense of emergency by putting in place the right management plans, both in terms from the climate perspective, adaptation and mitigation, and hopefully we can come through that, emerge into a renaissance that actually is much more creative, much more innovative, much more focusing on the good things.
Please comment, be part of the Green and Tonic community. We want to hear from you. And of course, as always, subscribe to the channel. Thank you.
Thank you.